in the pursuit of truth and common sense in an unbelievable world. You're listening to the Right Mind Podcast with your host, Todd Schowalter.
Hello, everybody. I'm Todd Schowalter, and welcome to Right Mind. Today, my guest is Kimberley Chapman. She's going to help us all become better people today because she's into wellness, spirituality. She has a radio show in Boca Raton, Florida. She's into a lot of things. How you doing, Kimberley?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great for you to be here. I really appreciate it. I mean, in this time that we're all living in, I think all of us could do to become better people. Tell us a little bit about what you do, how, spiritually, how we do that. And you just tell us about your whole process.
Well, it started when I was going through my second divorce.
Okay.
And I started questioning my belief system, why was I experiencing, so many forms of abuse, and, how do I stop that? First it's like, what's wrong with me? And then what's wrong with them? So
you're talking mental abuse though, right? Not physical.
Emotional.
Okay.
I've been through sexual abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, spiritual abuse, you name it. I've experienced it.
Okay.
And, I was brought up in a religion that I even questioned, my own religion.
What religion was that? What religion were you studying at that point?
Southern Baptist.
Practicing. Southern Baptist.
Well,
okay.
I was taught that from my parents because that's what my parents believe. So they just passed it on into me.
Okay. Right.
And I think that's very key because we're all taught beliefs, programmings, and experience emotional, energetic traumas from our upbringing, from our ancestors.
Okay. When you say, is this just as far as like being conditioned?
Yes.
Okay. So what you tried to do then, and correct me if I'm wrong, you'd been spiritually or religiously conditioned over time and that wasn't working for you. So you sought to change that, correct?
It is conditioned into religion that really didn't suit me.
Mm-hmm. All right. And
because there was contradicting information that I was receiving and I've always questioned it, but I never got the answer.
What kind of things were you questioning? What were you questioning?
Like, okay, for one, was Adam and Eve really the first human beings on the planet?
Uh-huh. So biblical stories and things like that.
Yes, and how to be. Okay. How you should be, and the woman's role and the man's role and all this other stuff. And I was just thinking like, well, I'm supposed to submit to my husband. He can abuse me and that's okay. Like, what does God think about that?
Right. Well, don't you think? Right. And so a lot of this, and, I've seen this in a lot of religions that are kind of, in my opinion, structured and built to suit particular those people that actually run the religion to suit their needs. The Bible itself, without getting, too deeply, into religion. I mean, do you think there are those that take it literally word for word, but I mean, the way I kind of see it, somebody told a story, they told the story to somebody else, that person told another story, and you know how it goes over time, that story changes. Do you think that the Bible needs more interpretation and can be interpreted different ways?
I am so glad you asked, Todd, because I have an eye opener and aha moments, because then I started spiritually waking up.
Okay.
I asked the questions and it led me, and it's still an ongoing search journey. I came across ancient civilization.
Ancient civilization.
Now, with my spirituality, yes. Ancient civilization, we can go back 36,000 years to writings that were written in Q&A form from the Sumerians. Okay. Come to find out, we have the Epic of Gilgamesh, Inamu Elish, we have the Emerald Tablets. These are writings in ancient form that existed all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And come to find out, that's how the Torah and the Quran and the Bible got their information.
Okay, were they all similar stories? I mean, did they mesh?
Some of them, yes.
Okay.
But some of them, no.
Okay, so if somebody were to ask you, Kimberly, how do you interpret the Bible? I mean, how do you go about doing that?
Well, one, there's plagiarism and copyright claims to it.
Okay.
Because if you look at the original ancient civilization and you can translate their writings, they took pieces of those writings from those tablets and created a narrative in these stories. And they took pieces of events that did take place and changed it to
suit their needs.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And that happens. I mean, unfortunately, I mean, that's what we're in this particular culture that we're living here now in. A lot of people change a lot of things to suit their needs. So going back to your particular situation, what were some of the first steps that you took to make the transition or the transformation rather into where you were to where you are now?
It just started by, if there's more to life than this. First it was like, if this is all there is to life, then check me out.
Right.
I really don't want to be here.
Right. Do you believe in heaven?
Do
you think there's an afterlife?
Yes, there is, because we're souls.
Right.
The best way I could put this is we have a soul. We're connected
right.
to this greater intelligence, divine source, energy that keeps our lungs exhaling, inhaling, our heart beating. We don't even have to think about it.
Right. Yeah.
So this soul, we're spiritual beings, sexual beings inside this human being.
Right.
It's like a machine, and the ghost is inside this machine.
Yeah, one of the ways I've kind of always seen it, and I don't know what you think about this, it's almost like, we're wearing our clothes now, but when we throw our clothes on the chair and we're done to go take a shower, I mean, our clothes are our outer body. I mean, we're still us. We're just not wearing that exterior anymore. So, I mean, do you see it kind of the same way? Like we all have this inner body within the bodies that we actually have. And then, once that's discarded, whether it's death or whatnot, we discard that and there's still us on the inside. I'm not trying to get too deep or spiritual here, but I don't know. To me, I kind of thought, maybe that's kind of a way of looking at it. What do you think?
Well, yeah, it's when you're in your beautiful soul, it's just energy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, everything is created with energy.
Right.
And then that energy can create a thought. And look around. We have cars, we have computers, we have all these things. And it started with the thought.
Right. Exactly. So basically, so what, I mean, do you believe that, there are all these trendy books, The Power of the Universe, The Secret, things like that. I mean, do you believe that there's a power like that is guiding us, that's created all this? I mean, I do. I'm very spiritual. I mean, but how do you see it? I mean, do you see that there's something that's actually like there's some rhyme and reason to all this, or how the world that we live in now, how does that all play out?
Well, because then I go through history and I keep saying, like, it's like I look around and observe. I'm like, oh my God, it's like a movie clip of all the time periods, like in one big movie screen, and all the time periods from our origins of how we were created, which we have a misconception about that, and it leads to a false identity of who we are. So you go.
Well, explain that. What do you mean? We have a false conception of what now? What do we?
Because if we, like what I mentioned earlier about this Adam and Eve being the first.
Okay. All right,
but
go ahead.
That's false.
All right.
Come to find out, do your own research, and you'll find that we were created in a way to create other civilizations. That's why there's different colors of human beings around. That's how they marked us to identify their own tribe or their own civilization to commingle together. But then, you see all the fighting and all the war, the hatred, the racism and all that. That's all taught. That's a program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Because again, I mean, we've had shows recently right here, well, we've talked about critical race theory, and basically kids, when they're innocent and young, they don't know any difference. I mean, whether you're black, yellow, purple, what, we're all having fun. We're all friends. And you're right. Over time, they're taught, they're conditioned, they have experiences, and that divisiveness starts. So go ahead. So, I mean, you're saying religion kind of falls into that same realm?
Yes. Look at religion and look at politics. It's all about division, and their way is the best way and all this other bullshit. Right. I'm like, no.
Right. No, I mean, I would know. And typically, especially in this day and age, division is used as a method of control because, if we divide everybody, then we can control them. But you're right. That is conditioned. Let's go back to, you're talking about, Adam and Eve, and that's more of a metaphor and things like that. Now, you have these people that are very on an evolutionary basis, say, no, everything, there is no God, and this and this and this happened. See, I believe, why couldn't God have created evolution? Where do you fall into that whole realm? I mean, are you obvious? I mean, if you don't believe that Adam and Eve, verbatim happen as it says in the Bible, what do you think really happened?
We were created from other species that came from another planet, another dimension, and started creating these human beings to take care of the earth, to, live and provide. And, it's amazing to me. They knew about metrics, units, geometry, math, all this stuff. Music.
You're going back again. You're saying like back in the ancient times.
Mm-hmm. And okay. How did they know this? It was highly evolved beings that came down to help create human beings, the Homo sapiens sapiens.
So you say came down. Do you mean literally from other galaxies, other planets, and things like that?
Other planets.
Okay. I know a few people I know a few people I would say are from another planet, but that's another story. But
but they even describe it in the Bible.
How did they do that?
Elijah, in a whirlwind. There's certain things, if you go through, you'll find. And how I look at it and thought about it, I was like, well, back in those times, they didn't know what we know now.
Right.
So back in those times, I can see how they described what they saw, but it wasn't a God. Excuse me. Sorry.
That's fine.
A God that was a man. It was part of it was an Anunnaki pantheons. They were different species, but they were a pantheon. They were a tribe of other species that came down, almost like a military organization, plot themselves here and there. And then I questioned, well, wait a minute. I know the United States hasn't always been here. There must have been a time and place where all the continents were somewhat clustered together. And when they came down, they positioned them, each group took one continent to another. And then
that's like Playtonics. I mean, Playtonics, back in a very, very long time ago in ancient times, even, way, way back before I was born, it's like all the continents and everything were actually connected. And you can see through how they divided over time, how Africa, fit with South America and things like that. So that did happen. So is that the time period that you're talking about?
Well, yes. And then I have, because I became a researcher and a history geek during my spiritual awakening.
Okay.
And it just kept I'd ask a question, then the answer would show up from a person or a book or something. And then I'd be like, wow, okay, that makes sense. But what about whatever that question was? Then another answer came. And it just led to another question. And that's how it started with me.
Okay. So one thing led to another. Now, do you think that we're all here for we all have a reason to be here. There's a purpose. And the part of this revelation that you had was putting you on your path to finding out what you're really supposed to do and why we're all here?
Yes, we all have a role to play, and it's for the greater good for mankind and our planet, because I understand about energy. There's positive energy and negative energy.
Sure, right.
And that's in every one of us. And there's other things like bad weather, and that's negative energy, but it's also good because it helps water our earth.
Mm-hmm.
But when we create more through our negative energy, but what happens if we change our negative energy, instead of being hateful, resentful, angry, hateful and all that? Why not change that to kindness and love?
Right. Well, how do you do that? Say
that energy can shift, and it's transferable. Like, perfect example is how I can say, if I smiled at you and I just met you in the grocery store.
Right.
I'm like, hey, how are you? You know what? You look good today. That shifts the energy, because it gets that person to, whoa, wait, I got a compliment. That felt good.
Sure. No, I agree. And it's, the power of being positive. I mean, now, I guess, I don't know if this leads right to, do you believe in the power of attraction and all of that, as far as having positive vibes, then attracts positive things? I mean, do you think that? Okay.
That is energy, because our emotions is energy in motion. So energy goes where attention, or energy flows where attention goes. So if your attention and your focus and your thoughts on this one thing that's not good or benefits you, then you're creating that emotion, that energy, to bring more of the experience of what you're thinking and feeling.
Okay. So this is more, again, it falls into that power of the universe type thing. Now, I know some people that, and they read these books. I can't remember her name. She was Australian. She wrote all these, The Secret and all that believe, if you throw some thought, like, I think, I want $1 million, I'm just going to throw it out there and let the universe take care of it, that it will. I mean, do you think that that's kind of grandiose? I mean, do you think that you can take some things too far?
Well, at the beginning, they left a key element out of that.
Okay.
They had good intentions, but they left a key element.
And what's that?
Because first you think the thought, okay, it's a good positive thought. But how does that feel? How are you creating the energy, the emotion to that thought of doing something, having something, or being something? You have to feel it. Feeling is the language to our soul, to the universe. It's not so much through words.
But you actually have to want something and feel that you really want it.
Well, here's the thing. If you want something, you're going to experience still wanting it. So change some of your vocabulary to, like, I wonder what it would feel like to experience receiving $100,000.
Okay, so you put yourself in that situation then, so you're actually feeling as if you were actually there, so to speak. Got you.
But you already had it. You already had the experience.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's worth trying. Let's go back to you though. Now, you said you had some, some traumatic things in your past, your childhood. Give me some examples. I mean, how you personally, what are some of the methods, some of the things that you've practiced to bring you out of where you were to the happier state you are in today?
Well, during my spiritual journey, I did not realize that I had these mental beliefs that I spoke over myself, or I took in from what somebody told me, through my childhood, and teenage years and adulthood. And then from the traumas, that created an emotion that actually changed the biochemistry in my body, and my body just got used to it. So I was operating and experiencing similar things because I wasn't dealing with the root of the origin of why
you felt that way.
Yes.
Okay.
And I feel like that's a lot of people's problems. They don't get that.
Right.
So I had to go through the process of asking the question, okay, why am I experiencing this? This is some familiar. How do I heal from this? How do I stop having this kind of experience? You know, when you're trying to be so positive and you're thinking about positive, you're listening to positive music, but then these circumstances keep arising, obstacles keep arising, then I have to check in with myself. I'm going, okay, something's not right here because I've been feeling good. And then this happened. And it's like triggers. That's the best way I could describe it. There's something that triggers.
Okay. Something from the past. It's something that'll happen in presently that'll trigger a memory from the past. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
And now I realize, okay, when those kind of things happen, and I recognize it, I pause and say, okay, this is something that I didn't deal with in my past. So how do I change instead of reacting? How can I respond to this in a best scenario to where I no longer have to have it come back full circle or repeat it again?
Gotcha. Yeah, I had a guest on my show a while back, and she was saying that the first 5 years of our life are the ones that pretty much, that's what it is. I mean, after your first 5 years, you are what you are emotionally. Do you believe in that?
Well, there's 7 years.
7 years. Okay.
7 years, give or take 7 years, because you're recording and we're still doing it. It's like your mind, from the beginning. Now think about this. When you're a baby and your parents are trying to feed you, like you're, about one, and they get the spoon and they're, the baby is mimicking the parent and opening their mouth just like so they're seeing, they can't talk, but they're seeing everything that the parents doing to feeding them and, bathing them. And so they're watching, they're observing, they're recording everything. That's when their mind is so fast and getting information and data in order to start being a human being and learning how to walk, learning how to do things independently, because they're seeing and watching others. And that's how we pick up habits and patterns and cycles from our parents.
Sure. Well, and it's a lot of it falls into being domesticated. I mean, there's been talk about that there's a domestication that happens with children, the innocence of children. And a story that I heard that makes pretty, good sense. I mean, when a child is, barely one and they're all encouraging him or her to walk. Oh, look at, Jimmy's, he's finally walking. And they're all encouraging him. So now the kid's all excited that everybody's happy that he's walking. And so now he's going to start running around the house. Now they're yelling at him, Jimmy, stop running around the house. And so now he's confused. So, there are some certain things that I could see from that kind of standpoint that contradict that from the whole domestication process would be confusing. Now, I don't know if that would, pretty much affect you for life, but are you saying those types of episodes or those types of situations do?
Confusion, yes. You gave a perfect example, Todd. Now stop running, so it does set a little confusion there.
Right.
But then they learn to adapt and adjust.
Right. Okay. Well, now, how did you, because you had some serious situations, especially your emotional abuse and things like that. I mean, those are pretty traumatizing. Now, were you able to, on your own, spiritually overcome these, or did you have to get help? I mean, did you have a therapist? I mean, did you have somebody walk you through this stuff, or were you able to, break it? Because that's a deep hole to be in. I mean, how are you able to dig out of it?
Well, I did experience depression because then I thought, and then going through, because I'm also a intuitive transmedium. So I had some spiritual gifts that I channel ancient civilization beings, highly evolved beings, and I speak in their language. So I channel them. So channeling is a very intense experience for me. But then I'm speaking these languages and I'm like, what in the hell was that? And what were you saying? I do not understand. Like I wasn't able to translate, and I'm still bits and pieces of being able to translate.
Well, how do you go about that? So you actually channel you're talking about people from the past. I mean, that you're able to, that you channel with, or when you say different civilizations, I mean, how does that work? How do you go about that?
The Mayans, I mean, this is civilization, like the language is lost, and, hardly anybody, there's a few that are now, one of them is a great mentor that actually studied the cuneiform writings from the Sumerians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and, all of them. Billy Carson, he's even got a book about the Emerald Tablets that he translates and then goes over with what Thoth was saying, the Lantinian, which I also channel, to what Jesus in the New Testament. He goes, you see the similarities.
So there are a lot of parallels, as you were saying. Okay.
Yes.
But you personally channel with people? I mean, how do you do that? I mean, I'm interested.
Well, it's something that I feel, like I said earlier, energies.
Okay.
Well, I can sense an energy of a spirit energy that wants to communicate with me. So I'm like, okay, hold up. What's going on? And, what do you want to say? Or, and there's times where I'll just record myself because I feel their presence. I'm like, okay, you have a message. Okay, let me press record and I'll go through the whole process, but it's very intense energy. I could sense a feminine energy and a male energy when they're communicating with me. And then the higher the frequency, I think the higher evolved they are.
Right.
And it's fascinating. It's really fascinating to me going through these experiences. And I'm like, wow.
Well, I would assume, though, you have to kind of be in the zone then, because, in all honesty, if you just tell somebody this on the street, they're not going to believe you. They're going to say, what is Kimberly talking about here? But I guess you got to be on the same plane, so to speak. You got to, believe in the magic for it to happen, correct?
Well, I'm open, and it's not so much believing, but when you experience things like paranormal activity, going into haunted places, which are really not haunted. They're just these spirits, being around, and they have no idea, like, hey, you don't have to be emotionally attached to this place. You're free to roam wherever you want to.
Okay. So it's all right. Well, it's interesting. It's interesting stuff. I think, it takes a lot of, it's not something you're going to do overnight. I mean, it's something you've got to really, get into and study more and things like that. But, it's wild stuff. I've heard about it. I haven't personally experienced anything quite like that. But, in this day and age, I mean, I think there are things, people say that we only use a minute fraction of our brain. There's things that happen in your dreams, your subconscious that, you wouldn't even think about during the day. So I think there are things that, people may, now, see as far-fetched that maybe really aren't as far-fetched as they seem, given that we really only use a portion of our brain. There could be a whole other mind that we haven't even used or tapped into yet. But I don't know, interesting stuff. Well, Kimberly, we're just about out of time. You've got a radio show also, and you're in Boca Raton, Florida. Tell us, how can we hear your show? How can we get in touch with you and learn more about you? Because you certainly have some fascinating things to talk about. Where are you, Kimberly? Where can we see you? Find you?
You can find me on iHeart, iTunes, Spotify, your desktop.
And what's your show? What's the name of your show?
It's Wake Up with KC.
Wake Up with KC, which we're going to put up on the screen and in the description. So Wake Up with KC, just the new K and C, and it's on all the major platforms, iHeart, Spotify, and all that. So, and I
have a website.
You have a website. Okay.
wakeupwithkc.com.
Wakeupwithkc.com. Sounds great. I'm going to check it out. Well, there's been some, it's one of those things that, really opens your mind, but then it's kind of like when you think about the universe, where does it end? Where does it end? After a while, it blows your mind. But, you've given me a lot to think about, and I hope it's given everybody that's been enjoying the show a lot to think about. So any final words before we cut out?
Well, I'm starting a online webinar event.
Okay.
Some courses and getting back into public speaking too, as well.
Now, will those be
talk about this?
Okay. Will they be available to your website that they can find out?
Yes, I'll post it when it comes out.
Okay.
It will be definitely on my website.
Wonderful. And again, we'll put all that up on the screen and in the description so everybody can find you. And a lot to think about, Kimberly, but I really want to thank you for joining me and being here today.
Well, thank you, Todd. It was surely a pleasure.
Well, likewise. And I'd like to thank all of you too, whether you've been listening or watching. I'm Todd Schowalter, and this is Right Mind. And remember, if you don't have a right mind, you don't have a mind at all. Till next time, bye-bye.
This has been the Right Mind Podcast with Todd Schowalter.